Hey everyone, BadServo here. Today I'm going to talk about a game I've been putting some time into recently, which is Alan Wake for the Xbox 360. Now if you're unfamiliar with Alan Wake, it is a game that's long been in development by Remedy. Remedy, of course, is the developer that brought us the Max Payne series of games. Now much like Max Payne, you're going to see that same sort of signature dark, gritty atmosphere in this game that you did in the previous entries. And overall, I gotta tell you, it's a really good game. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. It's difficult to talk about this game, plot-wise, without getting into spoilers, so I'm gonna hold off on that for a minute and just give you some general information. First off, the game is graphically beautiful. Considering this game has been in development since, I believe, 2005, and was initially intended for the PC, as opposed to the Xbox 360, and therefore it was expected that the game would have a lot more power behind it. The game looks surprisingly good. Now there are some issues with lip sync, with CGI characters not matching the dialogue, and some of the facial expressions definitely look weird. But compared to the lush atmospheres that you find yourself in during the course of normal gameplay, this is easy to overlook. A large part of this game takes place outside at night in the forest. So you have gorgeous colors, lush foliage, you know, just beautiful textures. I mean, the game looks fantastic. I did notice a couple instances of screen tearing and warping here and there, but nothing that your average gamer is not going to be able to easily overlook. I mean, it is hardly the worst I've ever seen. Sound. Now, the sound production is very good. Soundtrack is used, and music is used very sporadically, although it does have a nice score and an amazing soundtrack. It features not only some original songs, but also some pretty interesting pop tracks, some oldies, a few other things thrown in there to give it a little touch of the real. Overall, I think the sound design is great. I think the Foley and the voice acting is pretty damn good. Over the course of playing this game, if you don't spontaneously feel the need to have the actor that portrays Alan Wake narrate your next audiobook, there's clearly something wrong with you. So, let's see. So graphics are good, sound is good, gameplay. Now, based on sort of the reviews and trailers and gameplay footage I saw of this game before I picked it up, I expected it to be your typical run-and-gun survival horror kind of game. Now, the game definitely has a horror thriller vibe to it. The combat is not this any minute you're going to die, rapid fire, high pulse, no relaxation kind of game. This is not your, Silent Hill or your Resident Evil or anything. For the reference, those are games that I have typically not been a fan of. The combat it's third person, basically running, dodging, shooting, but it's sort of sporadic. It's not always on. It gives you a chance to breathe. I'm playing the game on normal difficulty, and at the normal setting I find that the game is not easy enough to feel like you're breezing through it, but it's not challenging enough to get you frustrated. I think it strikes a very good balance for the average gamer, and I think even a lot of novice gamers with a little practice could probably tackle this without too much trouble. You encounter checkpoints very frequently throughout the game, so if you die, it is hardly mission critical. I mean, you're seldom more than a few moments or a few steps behind where you died, if you in fact do so. The story is really the selling point of this game. This game has a very interesting and compelling story. It's also kind of meta, without giving anything away. It's kind of a worlds within worlds scenario. What you'll know from the onset is basically you portray the character of Alan Wake, who is a successful horror thriller writer, sort of a Stephen King type character, if you will. Now, at the time that the game starts, Alan has not been able to write anything for about 2 years since the publication of his previous novel. A severe case of writer's block. And as such, he's been getting increasingly frustrated and withdrawn from his wife, Alice. In an effort to sort of help him out, Alice books a sort of getaway to this small mountain mining town called Bright Falls, which seems to be, on the surface, a sort of very idyllic, and slightly odd place. As you progress, you'll meet a number of characters, and you'll start to see that things aren't quite what they seem. One of the benefits of this game's story is that pretty much every plot element you're introduced to has some alternate side to it that you don't discover until sometime down the road. Another interesting thing about this game is that it takes a sort of episodic approach to the story. If you're familiar with episodic games, they're usually a set of games in a series. Each game is sort of small, mostly self-contained, but involved in an overarching story. They're usually less expensive. Now, when you buy this game off the shelf, it is a full game, but as you play, you might play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you'll get some critical plot point or cinematic, and the game's logo will fly up. It will begin playing a song selection from the period of gameplay that you just completed, and it will say, you've completed Alan Wake Episode 1. At this point, you have the option to listen to the song or skip ahead to the next episode, at which point it will give you a brief recap of the game's story so far, and then ease you into the next episode. Now, while I do find this a genius move on the part of the developers, because it does give it a sort of thrilling TV show feel, and the game does feel very TV showish, if you like this sort of, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Night Gallery kind of thing. Also, it gives you an opportunity to really feel like you've accomplished something with what is a relatively brief play session. The thing I don't like about this is, although it's a wonderful idea, it's somewhat poorly implemented, because, if you as the developer present me with a conclusion to a part of the story, and give me this, full-length 3-4 minute song to listen to before the next episode starts, as a player, I assume that means that's my opportunity to take a break. So I would quit the game, go do something else, with the understanding that when I come back, it would launch me into the next episode. Well, that's not exactly how it works. What it actually does is restart you back to the last checkpoint before the previous episode ended. So, for example, near the end of episode 1, there's a pseudo-boss fight, and I completed that, got to the end of the episode, and listening to the song, and quit. When I came back, expecting it to start the next episode, it put me right before the boss battle. While not a deal-breaker, it is kind of annoying to have such a sort of a great aesthetic for breaks and then, not work out. It seems foolish to make me get the recap, start the next episode, and play a little bit before it will save and allow me to resume there. So yeah, all that's really good. Before I get into spoilers, let me just say that I've only played the game halfway. All of my opinions are from the perspective of someone that has played halfway through the game proper, because there is some downloadable content. I would have to say I would give this game an 8 out of 10. Considering it's not really my genre, I'm enjoying it a lot. The story really has me. It's definitely got a sort of Lovecraftian feel to it, so if that sounds compelling, I'd strongly recommend you to pick the game up. It is not a super new release. It's been out for a couple of months now, so I was able to pick up a new copy of the standard game for $36 at my local GameStop. Another benefit to that is if you buy a new retail copy, it also includes a game code you can redeem on Xbox Live for the first piece of downloadable content, called the Signal, which is another chunk of gameplay. They've also already announced a second downloadable content that I would expect will probably be out by the end of the year, or possibly in the first quarter of 2011. So look for that. At any rate, 8 out of 10, highly recommended. If you have an Xbox 360 and you're looking for some inexpensive gaming that'll get your heart racing, highly recommended. Now, complaints. This is where we're going to get into a few spoilers, and I'm not going to go overboard, so don't freak out. But, as I said, the world is very meta, and this presents a couple of problems, because there are some aspects of the story that don't make any sense. There are times when characters don't behave like you would think they would, and there's no real discernible reason for the disconnect. Also, there's some kind of strange continuity things. The game world you're playing with is ostensibly reality, but the conceit, as you learn later in the game, is that Alan is sort of creating this reality himself. And at one point you find out that he intentionally called a character into the world he was creating before he actually was aware of that character's existence within the continuity that you're playing. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you play it, you will understand what I mean. And granted, I know I'm only halfway through, so it is entirely possible that the narrative will wrap up these loose ends, or at least allow them to make a little more sense, but as it's presented in the game, I'm very puzzled by that. But it does not detract from the quality of the story. And again, this game is all about the story. Highly recommended for that point. So yeah, I don't want to spoil too much, so I don't want to talk more about it, but yeah, just a really great game. I'm really enjoying it. I hope that as I wrap it up, the story continues to live up to the expectations it's already set, and I have high hopes for the downloadable content, because this is kind of a short game. The game proper is 6 episodes long, with each episode taking approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete. So it's not a lot of playtime, and the game's very linear. So there's not going to be a ton of replay value. Now when I say linear, it's you don't have a lot of choice about what tasks you pursue next, or where to go in the game world. It's not as corridor crawly as recent entries in the Final Fantasy VII series, for instance, but you do have a very defined path. Now, thankfully, the graphical world you find yourself in is, like I say, it's very kind of a lush, so you don't feel like you're enclosed. It's not like you just look straight down a corridor and you're like, oh, clearly I'm going to go over there. It feels open, but it's very false. I mean, the game is very, very linear. So, very little replay value, relatively short game. The free DLC, if you buy the game news, does offset that a little bit, and if they can keep future DLC coming and reasonably priced, I still think the game is a fair value compared to some of the other AAA titles that are around right now. So, yeah, that's it. I pick it up. If you've played Alan Wake, or play Alan Wake at some point in the future, please leave me a comment or a video response letting me know what you thought. If you found this review helpful and insightful at all, feel free